Why am I standing here next to a parking lot instead of sitting in some serene, natural spot? Well, today I want to talk about street meditation, which is one of the most important forms of meditation and mindfulness practice. And the basic idea is that we're flipping the ordinary practice of mindfulness on its head. Usually we think of mindfulness as a practice that's reserved for a retreat setting. We seal ourselves away from distraction, from loud trucks, from people walking by, from urban settings. We go to the mountains, we go to the beach. In this particular case, though, with street practice, we are actually going toward the sounds and the sights and all of the distractions that fill our modern life that often lead us to close down. And we're now using those as the object of meditation practice. So today what I want to do is give you a few tips for how to optimize your practice of street meditation and begin shifting from this retreat model of meditation to doing meditation wherever you are, even if you happen to be in a very loud, uncomfortable, urban setting. So the first tip is to change the setting. You're used to meditating in very quiet, undistracted environments, but in this practice, the idea is to approach or move toward places like this, with loud sounds like this. So find a setting that you might regard normally as a little bit irritating or something that causes you some mild anxiety, and see what happens when you use that as the object of your concentration. The second tip is to embrace embarrassment. Let's face it, nobody likes to feel awkward or uncomfortable, and we all want to be seen by the rest of the world as impressive or competent or not weird. And in this practice, when you sit down in the middle of an urban environment where most people are walking or shopping or doing something else, it looks weird. And so the first thing that will come up for you, definitely comes up for me every time I do street meditation, is this feeling of embarrassment. And what you want to do when that arises is just make that the object of your practice. Just get really curious about what is it like to feel embarrassment. Just allow that experience to move through and then see what happens. The third tip is to find somewhere to sit for the seated formal practice of meditation. Again, it's just like you're on a retreat. The only difference is you find yourself in a very chaotic urban environment instead of some sealed away retreat center. So there are a lot of different ways to do this. You might find a chair somewhere. That's always a great option. Usually there's a bench of some sort. And if all of that fails, you can always find a comfortable place on the ground, leaning against a wall somewhere for your urban street meditation. Tip 4, open your eyes wide. The big idea here is that unlike many retreat forms of meditation where we're closing our eyes and we're going inward in this retreat setting, in this practice, we want to approach. We want to integrate the practice with the chaos that is modern life in these kinds of environments. So as a result, this is an eyes open practice. And what we're doing is just watching what's happening in the visual field. And one tip here is to allow your gaze to expand. Think panoramic awareness here, right? So it's almost like you're zooming out from that usual death stare on your smartphone to this wider, more expansive visual awareness. And you start to see amazing things in a new way, like this. Tip 5, allow in sound. In some ways, I think you could argue that the essence of street meditation is allowing in the sounds of the environment. These are sounds like the ones that are right around me right now. I'm on a busy street in the middle of my town. And we usually view these sounds as bad, not pleasurable, maybe even painful, or they induce anxiety or irritation. And that's part of the impulse that leads us to want to escape to a retreat setting. But in this practice, we want to see what happens when we actually allow all of these sounds, the loud sounds, the harsh sounds, into our practice. And one of the things that you'll probably notice as you're doing this practice is that when these sounds arise, there's also stories attached to them and judgments attached to them, that they're bad sounds, they're loud sounds, they're annoying sounds. So one of the keys here as you're sitting and you're hearing these sounds is to see what happens when you experience them directly. Notice the story, but see if you can go to the direct experience of the sound. Imagine you're hearing this sound for the first time. It's that beginner's mind that you're bringing to these sounds. So you've now got the basics of the seated street meditation practice, but I want to give you one final tip. Because just like in retreat settings, we tend to mix seated meditation with walking meditation, and walking meditation in these more chaotic urban environments is actually quite amazing. So to do a walking practice, basically you're just walking and wandering around an environment like this, someplace that causes you a little bit of stress, maybe irritation. And as you walk and you wander, you're using this as a mindfulness practice. So eyes are open. Obviously, you want to keep your eyes open, otherwise you might kill yourself. You might get hit by a car or something. But you're also listening to sound. And also you want to monitor your pace. We have this tendency to rush around in ordinary life. So you can use these walking periods as a chance to slow down and just see what happens when you slow down the whole perceptual experience of being in this space. So those are the main tips for how to practice street meditation. But at this point, I'm guessing you're probably still thinking to yourself some version of, why on earth would I ever do a practice like this? I barely have time to meditate as it is. Why would I go to some crazy, loud, chaotic, anxiety-inducing place? And the answer to that question is that if you think about why we're doing this practice, why we're meditating, it's because we're trying to integrate this practice and this experience that we're cultivating of present moment awareness into the midst of our everyday life. And so when we do it on the cushion, sealed away from distraction, that's useful. We're building these muscles that often translate into everyday life. But street meditation is really a much more direct translation into the midst of everyday life. So I think of it as a kind of integration practice, that if we really want to bring this awareness with us into the world, we need to practice doing it in the world. And that's this practice of street meditation. So I hope you enjoy the practice. Leave some of your experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear how it's going with you. And I would love it if you'd be willing to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. That's how we can grow this channel. I'll be releasing weekly content, videos on guided practices and insights, the science of meditation. So thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.